Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Rumbi Potter. I am the founder and one of the mentors at African Youth Arise. I'm the one who's going to be facilitating the discussion on women's health. Um, it's part of a wider project amongst young people. But our approach as African Youth Arise, we like to partner with parents, we like to consult with parents on the discussion so that when we are delivering these sessions to young people, you're not completely or solely shocked with what you will hear. We want you to be part of this discussion to move forward. So we're going to be here, I think, for the next sort of like 2.5 hours, having a discussion. We've got Pastor Nick Dube, who has been amazingly part of the discussion throughout the project, and alongside Ru, also called Menstruation Bay, Ruvimbo or Ru, and I'm sure she doesn't mind being called both. So yeah, really welcome. If you can just state sort of like your name on the chat, your email address if you want to continue to receive notifications from us in terms of the project, how we're progressing with the project, because we are running this project for the next sort of like 18 months. So we are going to continue to have these discussions. So if you're not within our circle or, part of like the groups that we advertise, please drop your email and we'll make sure that every time we have sessions, we'll forward it. We'll make sure that we invite you to the sessions. So yeah, we're really looking forward also in terms of, as you guessed, we're looking forward to have your contribution this evening. It's not just us presenting facts, figures. It's for us to actually have a progressive conversation to it. What we do acknowledge, I think, as African Youth Arise and our partners, is that this is a really difficult conversation to navigate. Aspects of what we will be discussing could be considered as taboo. We're not here to offend anybody, but we just want to make sure that we're supporting young people and we are imparting young people with the tools that they need en route to adulthood. So good evening. We're gonna make a start and respect those that have arrived on time. The session will be recorded, so when you are making a contribution, please ensure that you're comfortable with what you're sharing. If you are sharing a scenario, please make sure that it's anonymized because we'll be sharing this on our YouTube channel to ensure that it reaches some of the guests that would have loved to attend, but they're not with us. So yeah, just be mindful of that. If you can just drop your name in the chat and sort of like let us know where you are at the moment, and if you want to receive further sort of like comms from us, if you just drop your email address. I'm going to introduce the two facilitators that are working alongside me this evening. And then we'll make a start. So I'll start off with Ru. Do you want to introduce yourself, a little bit about what you do, why you do what you do, and why you feel that it's important for us to have this discussion?
Yes, of course. Hi everyone. Lovely to see you this evening, and it's a great honor to be back because last time I was also here with Pastor Nick as well, and it was a really insightful conversation and session. So my name is Ruvimbo, I am a public health graduate. I'm also a student nurse who's completing her master's. So I'm in my final year. I am also known as Menstrual Bay, not menstruating. It's Rumbi, Menstrual Bay.
Oh, Metro Bay. I forgot. Sorry. Sorry.
Menstrual Bay, and also the founder of a women's health registered charity called Her Pure Joy Foundation that is tackling period poverty and also educating on sexual health back home in Zimbabwe. And why I do what I do is because back when I also navigated womanhood, I didn't have a me. I think it was also quite difficult for my mother because I was her firstborn, and I think I give her grace because she did what she knew at the time, and I think now getting older, we now have conversations that I wouldn't even have imagined that we speak about, all because of just being open and just being transparent as well. But I also take it upon myself to put my face on social media and talk about the challenges and the toughest conversation, especially coming from an African background. Some of these topics are very taboo, but I think I'm breaking some barriers, and I do get messages and also from mothers, fathers who are really enjoying my content. So I take this responsibility of being called Menstrual Bay with so much pride because I know nowadays young people that have someone to talk to and look to. So yes, and also there's also things like period poverty. There's also things where we get to find out when you're now knowing about these things that there are others that are not attending school, that are missing school because of periods. They can't afford it. It's not only in Africa, but I also found out during my reading and research that in the UK, it's also there that there are people that do not have the facilities of having proper hygiene and management when it comes to their periods. So it's something that I take pride in, and I hope that I, you know, get to deliver something that you guys can take home with. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ru. I'm always laughing with my sister. I say we always say like if there's anyone to deliver this topic on social media, you're the right person for it. It had to be you. Definitely, it had to be you. So yeah, we're really proud of you, and
Thank
we are we are shouting from the back.
you.
Definitely, we're cheering you on from the back, and that's why we invited you to this session because I think it's incredibly brave to have this discussion, and I also know the position that you hold in the church. I was looking at like one of the church conferences you attended last week, and I was thinking, oh my God, Ru, you know, Ru is also one of them. I think you're the president, the youth president, isn't it, across the UK and Ireland, isn't it? In one of the churches, United Methodist Church. So yeah, I mean, Ru is really taking a risk here, and joined by Pastor Nick. Pastor Nick, please go ahead and introduce yourself. I'm sure people do know you by now, but I think we do have new guests. So if you can just introduce yourself and
thank you, Rumbi. Thank you, Ru, or should I say, Your Excellency, the President. Thank you so much. We are honored to have you here. But to everyone joining, it's a joy and it's always a privilege to come in on these platforms. And sometimes like you, for me, it's overwhelming. My journey or background really has been in church leadership. I was in church leadership. The church I grew up in Zimbabwe, and over to the UK. We pastored one of the local branches with my wife for over nearly 10 years or so. About 10 or years ago or so, I think there was a shift for me, and that's when I moved into the trainings that I did, the university, both in Leeds and here in London, which was business and executive coaching, and also psychology and counseling. At the moment, also pursuing on the path for clinical psychology at the moment. But the shift for me was rather painful because I think I've said this before. Me and my wife used to stay in Wales, and there was a season in Wales where there was this sort of spree of young people coming in online to commit suicide. And that really shocked me. And I began to have conversations with young people in the church, and I found issues after issues, painful issues that children and young people were dealing with. Yet at the same time, there was sort of like this gap between what they were confronted with in this culture, in this environment, and most parents sort of like unaware or ill-equipped in how to respond and dealing with them. And I dealt with many families whose children and young people joined gangs. Some girls ran away from home at age 13 and 14 and 15 and all sorts of situations. I think I've attended about 2 or 3 funerals of young people who committed suicide out of these sexual issues and relationships and early pregnancy, and without like sort of like an ability for our culture, our language, our community to be able to put these things in a language that can be supportive. So yeah, so my passion has been really driven by that, and especially within the church community. I found that the church community was good in being spiritual, but most kids felt like they were just being dragged to church. When they come home, they're dealing with all sorts of things that the parents are not aware of. And so I started working with churches and some other community organizations in bringing these conversations to the church, mental health, young people, the challenges that young people are dealing with, the issues of drugs, of gangs, and really bringing awareness to parents, to families, especially those from our background, in being aware of what is confronting their children and young people and how to be equipped to deal with them. So it is an honor. I thank you, African Youth Arise, in just being able to add a voice or two in these critical conversations, and looking forward to tonight. Thank you so much.
Great, fantastic. Thank you, Pastor Nick. So we'll delve into the discussion. I'm aware that a few of you have joined the discussion a little bit later. We had already done introduction so that you just know who everybody is. I'm Rumbi Potter. I am the founder of African Youth Arise, also a mentor. African Youth Arise is a charity that looks to empower, enrich, and enhance young people of African descent who are mainly based in the UK. Currently, we are delving into a project focusing on sexual health amongst young people. And therefore, we have invited you as parents to be part of this discussion as a consultation to ensure that when we have these discussions with your children or your young people, you are fully aware, sort of like where our stance is and what we are discussing, so that you're not shocked, and you can also part of the discussion and you can also contribute and empower your children. So we'll make a start. I'm going to hand over the just before we hand over. I hand over to Ru. I think we will do a disclaimer. We are going to be recording the conversation. So when it comes to your contribution, and we will ask you to contribute to the discussion, please make sure that you're comfortable with what you are contributing, because it will be on our YouTube channel. I think the other thing is, at times we may touch on very sensitive topics that may trigger you. If you feel sort of triggered as part of this discussion, please do sort of like let us know. We've got support that's around, as you've heard. We've got a mental health team that is amongst us. What I'm aware of is these discussions tend to trigger aspects of sexual health, either in the past or whatever. So we're fully aware that we're having a really difficult discussion. So if you do need support, please do let us know. Also, if you would like to continue having this discussion with us in further topics, please drop in your email address, and we will ensure that we'll invite you to the next upcoming discussions. Right, I will hand it over and if you do have any questions, please just drop them in the chat so that you don't forget. What we'll do is, like, once Ruvimbo and Pastor Nick have finished, we will then invite you to have a discussion, to have a contribution, or to ask questions, and then we'll move forward. I can ask everybody to be on mute, that would be great, except except for the speaker at the time. All right, I will hand it over to Ru for the time being.
Thank you so much. So we've already done our little introductions, but yeah, it's really lovely to be seeing you guys, to be speaking to you. But on my end of the topic, or should I say of the session, we'll be talking more on the menstrual health side of things, and Pastor Dube will also be, coming in. I'll probably give him a nudge, and when he's talking, he's probably going to give me a nudge. So on my end, the question I have raised is how talking about periods prepares parents to bigger conversations. So as I have established myself, I've already told you that I am a menstrual health educator, and part of what I really want to break, or the cycle that I want to break, is making sure that periods are not a secret, periods are not kept to be something that, oh, we deal with it as soon as they start, because usually when someone starts their period, that's when they're now known as a woman, in society or in our culture at times. And I also want to add that the youngest at the moment of girls that are now starting their periods is 8 years old. So take that information however you want to take it, because at 8 years old, all I'm saying is don't wait for the opportunity to come where they start their periods, but I think it should now be something that is practiced at home, just small conversation starters, which I'll put at the end as well, like how to start talking about the bigger conversations, or starting with the small conversations, how we navigate all of that. So with my objectives for today, or by the end of the sessions, I am hoping that parents here will understand why menstrual health is a foundation for sexual health and consent. Also see how silence and stigma affect girls and boys. So it's also important for me to highlight that in this objective, I want to make sure that parents and everyone here gets to take the initiative to understand that it's not just a woman's business. Periods are everyone's business, because your daughters can start your period when mum is at work and dad is the one at home. Your daughters can start a period at school and mum is not able to answer their phone, but dad is able to answer their phone. So it is everyone's business. So I want this to be a conversation that is not known to just be, oh, it's just a girl's thing or a women's thing. It is everyone's thing. That's one of the main objectives. And the second one is to learn practical strategies to support children through puberty and menstruation. So this will be more of conversational starters. So I'll just give some starting startup lines for you to just take on, and then also hopefully you leave feeling like, okay, there's some things that I've learned and there's now some things that I need to unlearn. So this environment is more of it's a safe one, and I want it to continue to being a safe one. I want it to be a healthy one, so that maybe the next person you're going to talk to, maybe a niece of yours, or even your daughter, or you may not have children, but you've got children in the family. So I just want it to be a a thing you take with you. You feel empowered to now share the same information or share what you've learned going forward. I had a little icebreaker where I now talk about when I started my period, but I don't really want to keep it too long. But for me, to just give it as a background, for me, I started when I was 11 years old in my science class, and I was very scared to tell my mum because I thought it was the end of me. When they come to school, they tell you about a period, they show you a pad, and I don't know if your children have had this or if you are aware, but there's school nurses that come, they don't tell you about anything beyond what's going to happen to you when it comes to periods. There's conditions that are attached to periods, but what they do is they come and tell you girls and boys split. You get splitted up. I don't know if it's still the same now, but back in my time we had to split. The boys couldn't hear the conversation about periods, and we couldn't hear about the puberty conversation about boys. I got to learn this through my love and passion for menstrual health education. So, what happened is a teacher tells you someone is coming, a nurse comes in, they talk, they give you an underwear, they show you that there's this product called a pad and a tampon at the time. And basically, they tell you that your symptoms are just going to be normal, they're going to be the same as everyone, which is a lie because everyone is different, but you get to navigate all those things, as you go. Anyways, when it was now my turn to start my period, it was horrible. The pain, everything tragic. But what I had in my head was what my school nurse told me, that it was going to be normal. And I was also scared to talk about it with my mum. I think I didn't even comprehend that it's a period. I just thought something was wrong with me. The first person I told was my best friend in secondary school. And she was like, "Oh, you started your period." But I started crying because, again, I thought something was wrong with me. At home, mum has not really said anything because you're now known to be this woman or a grown up. That's what I always thought. So I went home, and my older cousin was at home. I told her that something is up, but I didn't want to say anything. So I went to bed in the afternoon, which is not like me. I went to bed to sleep. I woke up and my mom and dad had just come from Asda. Still, my cousin is still fishing around, like, what's going on with Rue? I then end up telling her, but I didn't want her to make a big deal out of it because, again, you're known to be a grown up, everything has changed, whatever they say. And then I told her not to tell my mother. Again, the fear in me, I don't know why I was scared to tell my mom, but I just thought something huge was going to happen if my mom finds out. Eventually, I ended up telling my mother, and my mom now, when she tells me, she says, "I wish you did tell me, and I wish I did create a safe space for you to tell me," because I did a whole roundabout. I told my best friend, who had not even started her period, but she knew what it was because she has older sisters. I then was hiding from my older cousin because I didn't want her to make a big deal. Eventually, it ended to my mom, who now felt bad for not really opening that talk or that that conversation starter, whatever. It didn't come within, or we didn't come from her. So my thing here is that if my story is like that, everyone else that has grown in my generation is have similar. And I think even now, when you go back in generations, it's even quite worse because they didn't have room to speak about these things. And I think it can also be backed up, or even something that can be a religious thing. Maybe I can even ask Pastor Nick, like, growing up, what was it like for you, especially someone who grew up in church? How was it? Was it shielded? Was it, out loud? Was it hushed up? Those kind of things. Let me know.
Yeah. Thank you, Ro. I can say growing up in church, or even just, I grew up in Zimbabwe, and I grew up in the church in Zimbabwe. And I can tell you that I don't remember anyone sitting me down as a young boy to tell me about puberty, to tell me about sex, to tell me about any of these things. And unfortunately, even in church, we were kind of like shielded from some of these things, because I think in church we were so much beaten down by the idea of don't, and that it produces a fear and a curiosity at the same time. And many of the young people grow up would fall into that trap, early teen pregnancies, because we were both ignorant and afraid at the same time. No one was telling us anything from home. There wasn't that uncles and other people were there, but it was almost like it's an adult thing.
Yes.
You know, we can't tell you anything about it. Even in church, it was almost the same message. You know, it's like you will only when you're preparing to get married, that's when maybe the church steps in a little bit and start telling you. But until then, growing up in youth, in young adults, you know, it's like, no, focus on Jesus. You know, but we have these thoughts and these feelings. I love Jesus, but what do I do with what I'm thinking and feeling? And unfortunately, many young people, there were lots of accidents, so to speak, because there wasn't that, you know, conversation. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, because I think when we now think of why the silent, with what you've explained, if silence is something that's continued, girls grow up ashamed and unprepared, and then boys, then they grow up ignorant and sometimes even tease and disrespect the girls. But what needs to be taught is that it's not a choice that happens, it's something that's within the women's nature, so it happens to women. And I think it's important to highlight that in the community we come from, in the African community, yes, growing up, periods were such a huge taboo, still is in some cases. And I like the fact that you highlighted that it was a grown-up thing, and I think that's why I was scared to tell my mum, because I felt like, oh, I'm now this person, this woman, because um again, culturally, there's this thing attached to being on your period, and now you're now a woman, and the first thing that comes to mind, or the first thing that you're told, is pregnancy. You're already installed with pregnancy talks, you're already installed with like, oh, if you do this, if you do that, but no one is really highlighting the key aspect of, okay, now that you're here, there's no gentleness to it. It's just like, okay, if you start playing with boys, if you start doing this, then this is going to happen when you start your period. So there was never really a touch on the awareness and education. So I really like the fact that you did touch on those things. So I think when we are breaking silence, we want our girls to be prepared. We want them to be less ashamed. We don't want stigma attached to it. And we also want the boys to be supportive. We want them to be educated. We want them to be respectful, because they're going to be fathers. They're also our brothers, and they're also friends. There will be developing relationships. You don't want to raise someone who's now ignorant to the fact that nature is happening in a woman's, cycle or body. There's also a research, a PubMed that I found 2014, and it shows that girls who are prepared before the first period are much more confident and positive about their bodies. And I think before this session started, when Sis Rumbi was just talking with me and Pastor Nick, we also did touch on that when we speak on these things, we're highlighting on the key important things of life, because they're fundamental. What we're not doing is trying to sit down parents and tell them that, oh, they should let their children, have sex or whatever. But I think what needs to be understood as well is that children learn, they pick up things, whether you want to do it, you want to do the teaching or not, they're going to learn somewhere. And learning from social media and friends, it's not a positive thing at the moment because there's a lot happening on social media. So the key thing here is just to motivate and encourage parents to continue to talk about these difficult conversations so that it's happening at home, and when they go out there they have insightful decisions to make because it's already something that's spoken about at home. I don't know if you have anything to add, Pastor Nick, before I move on.
Just one statement, as we were talking, that I was thinking of that. I just thought when we are talking, obviously directed at young people, these young people are the ones that have grown up to be adults, to be parents, to be professionals, to be where we are today. Many of us sitting in this platform, and I just had this thought that for them to get there, it's not a destination. It's not just them arriving at that point, but it is a process that starts now, starts as early as possible. That I think, it's all these things are a seed. I think let us not hold in our minds the vision and the dream of what we want them to be, but but we avoid planting the seeds today. So that it's an ongoing. It's developing. We are building, whether they're boys or girls. Think of the vision that I want my son or daughter to be a successful, responsible adult in their sexuality, in their relationships, in whatever area. But that journey and that conversation starts now.
Yes.
They are not just going to arrive there simple because they did a good degree or got successful in some things. It's every day. It's being intentional every day, being intentional. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I also just want to
go. Sorry, Ru. We do have a hand raised. I had asked guests to add their questions to the chat so that we just keep the flow of the conversation.
Yeah.
And after Ru and Pastor Nick have finished, then we will take questions and we'll take sort of like contributions. If you think you may forget your contribution, you can just add it to the chat in the meantime. Then we'll just go through the chat and ask you to contribute if that's okay. I hope that's okay with everybody. Ru, would you like to proceed, please?
Yeah, that's.
And if you can just put yourselves on mute if you're not contributing at the moment, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to clarify the hand that was raised. That's for later on, then. Yeah.
Yeah, we had just asked guests to yeah. If
no
worries.
Okay. Fine. Just to continue on with the impact of silence. So there is also research globally that shows that stigma and lack of support even affect education and confidence for these young girls that are about to enter womanhood, that their periods. And I think it's also something that also happens not only in this country, but even looking at it from a point of let's say back home in Zimbabwe, lack of such conversations being spoken about. There's the period poverty thing that I spoke about. So period poverty is basically not having the necessities or the equipment or even money to use or to buy products. Period poverty also brings in not having the adequate information and education. That's also part of period poverty. So it touches on finance, it touches on education and awareness, it touches on not having the right sanitary products or even any at all, and also management or having hygiene, not even having toilets, things like that. So I think when we now look at it here for those that have grown up here with children here, it's really important to be having conversations about their periods, even if it comes to the point where you ask and just educate on a menstrual product. even getting it out and asking your sons, asking your daughters, do you know what this is, what it does? There are types of different products out there. And when we talk to boys, the really huge thing I saw when I was still in high school, during my, especially when everyone was now starting their periods, is boys used to think that periods are dirty, and they used to really mock and laugh. Only a few would really be friendly and supportive, but a lot of the times, boys used to think that periods are dirty. And that was also because of lack of awareness, lack of support in education, and just not knowing what they're talking about, because all they knew, it was just a disgusting thing, and that was that. So I think we are also having these conversations to make sure that we're not um surrounding ourselves in that kind of mindset, but we are moving forward to make sure both boys and girls are equipped in life when it comes to menstrual health, because like I said, it's everyone's business. Also, Pastor Nick, just because I just had that conversation, you know, back in your time as well, when you were growing up, I don't know if you had sisters or if you were ever around cousins. Is there anything you remember about periods, or anything attached to periods that always made you feel like it's not something you want to get involved in, or the men around you never wanted to get involved in?
Yeah, I mean, well, you said back in my time, I'm only just 17.
I know. This is what I was just
I'm
about to
only
say.
just
That you're
17.
feeling very brave this evening.
And I just forgot to share. I'm joking, but but you shared a similar thing. I think we grew up ignorant of these things. That's the only we didn't know, and and that idea of, oh no, I mean, even though when we saw it, the word that you just mentioned is the thing that we went with, like, oh, unclean, dirty, or something wrong, and it was just pure ignorance. We'll just laugh at it or just purely ignore it. And so, but also we were not even aware of it. I mean, I think half of my childhood I wasn't even aware of, girls around me, be it family or anyone else, going through those things, what it meant for them, what role would I play, either as a brother or cousin, or how does it prepare me as a father or husband. And it was almost like just being ignorant, being unaware, at the very least, just viewing it, as you have said, and just looking at girls just being dirty, and and things like that.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for touching that. I literally forgot like you were less than 21. I'm so sorry. um, so we just can move on now to why menstrual health. I think the first thing I do want to highlight is menstrual health is more than just bleeding between 3 to 7 days. For some, it's more. There's conditions that are attached to menstrual health that, I mean, I don't have a lot of time to like digest one by one, but I can just name a few. There's things like polycystic ovary syndrome, there's endometriosis, there's adenomyosis, there is fibroids. And fibroids is actually one of PCOS, polycystic ovaries, and fibroids is actually one of the conditions that's known to Black women. That's the highest one, and it usually affects a lot of Black women. So when it comes to menstrual health, it's not only just the bleeding, it's now understanding the mental health that comes with menstrual health, because there are people who have developed some diagnosis of menstrual health, of mental health disorders due to their menstrual health. There's also people that have now got their diagnosis of the physical side of menstrual health. So it's something we need to continuously talk about, research and reading, just having conversations in terms of understanding your child. Number one, no one knows their bodies more than them. And I think that's something, when I used to go to my mom and tell her my periods are painful, they're really, really hurting me, I trusted I really love the fact that she believed me and never made me feel like I was this lazy person, because I've had some friends who do have family members who have considered them to be lazy every time they're on their period, because they're not doing housework, they're not doing chores, they're not looking after the family or whatever that looked like for them. But there are conditions that actually affect the women or the girls, that it actually stops them from their daily tasks or their everyday task. For myself, I'll bring myself as an example so that I'm not bringing anyone's name. For myself, I actually had to stop university because of menstrual health. It was something that my doctor was like, you can't continue, because I was now not fit to practice. And university also was like, yes, the assessment shows that you're not fit to practice, so you do need to take time out. It is really daunting, some of these things. And what I really enjoy and love is the fact that my parents have become understanding, have become somewhat open to conversations about these things, because I mean, my face is on the internet talking about these things. So if they're not engaging with me, then it wouldn't feel right as well. So it's very important to believe, when your children are coming to you, that they have painful periods. It takes years. I know endometriosis takes about 7 to 10 years. Let's just say someone who started their period at 12 and 15, they keep going to the GP. At 24, that's when they probably may get a diagnosis that, yeah, they do have this. But if they don't have advocates at home, advocates in their community, it defeats the purpose of them wanting to be, because sometimes you're going to think you're making these things up. But I urge parents to just also find ways to research, just maybe even go on NHS, type in a condition, a women's health condition related to periods, and just get to understand, because maybe the symptoms that your daughter is talking about can relate to what the NHS is also supporting. Booking the appointment, going with them to their appointments, making sure that the GP is not gaslighting them, because sometimes they will gaslight, and you just feel defeated to even want to keep going. So it's really important to understand that menstrual health is more than just the bleeding. I want to emphasize that so much, that there is things that are attached to the women's health in menstrual health that also can now affect them in their everyday life. And I think even culturally, growing up, my grandma used to tell me, I don't know what it is in English, but in Shona, I'm sorry, I'm gonna just use my language, my mother tongue for now. In Shona, it's called Jeko, and what I think Jeko, I hope I've said that right, and it's basically someone who experiences very debilitating periods, and they're heavy. And that, I've known a lot of women older than me who always say, when I was growing up, I used to have that, Jeko. It's normal. It's not normal, because it's now something that obviously back then it probably wasn't something that was looked into further, or people just didn't really want to associate themselves with just talking about periods out loud. But now we are in a country or with resources. If you're not in the UK, there are also resources like the internet that can help us expand and know these things going forward. And also, even there was someone who told me, there was a guy, actually, a guy friend of mine, who told me, oh, I grew up with an auntie of mine, and he really watches my content, and he watched something about polycystic ovary syndrome, and in short it's PCOS. And he saw that symptoms like hirsutism, so hirsutism is having facial hair under your chin or on the side or on your chest here for women. So he said, oh, I grew up with an auntie that had these facial hairs. But I'm guessing she never knew that there's something called PCOS because it was never highlighted or something that was a conversation to have, or it just wasn't an awareness of education back, in the time when she grew up in Zimbabwe. And I was like, yeah, that's why I'm making the content that I'm making, so that it's not normalized. It's okay to really understand that, okay, there's something called PCOS. I could have it, I may not have it, or I just have slight, mild, or even just small symptoms. It doesn't mean that now, it's the end of the world, but it just means now you get to navigate and understand the symptoms yourself. I don't know if you have anything to add, Pastor Nick. I know I've just been probably saying loads.
No, that's fine. No, you can continue for now. No, thank you. We are receiving. I don't know if Rumbi. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna add around normalizing the pain. I think I was one of the people who really just normalized the pain. Up until I think I was losing two 2 to 3 days of work per month.
Yeah.
But that was the language, I think. I think it's so important around the language that we use when we're talking to young people. That term around, oh yeah, like your grandmother had it, your aunt had it, it's hereditary. So you then, as a young person, I think when such language is being used, you then accept it that okay, if my grandmother had it, if my mom had it, you just normalize it. So I
Yeah.
think it's really important to highlight and to believe young people when they say, and to take it seriously, and make sure you go to the doctors. I think I was like really in my early 30s when I was diagnosed, like for example, like fibroids. But I think I had suffered for so long, actually not knowing, and probably even at the time when I was diagnosed, they had enlarged. And if I had been to the doctor, because I had normalized that pain, really, that excruciating, I mean, it was just excruciating. So I think it's really important just to emphasize that point around, when let's believe young people, let's take it seriously, let's get them to go to the health professionals. If the health professionals are not listening, we keep knocking on their doors and make sure that we get them the right support and help that they need and intervention.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. Thank you. I think now I'll just do some practical questions that are conversational starters. So, of course, when we're talking about menstrual health, we're also definitely talking about sexual health, and that also leads to like consent as well. And one of the questions that's one of a great starting conversation to have with children is asking them what they understand about relationships. You can just literally start there. Now, you also can put in another question and ask, how do they define a healthy relationship, or what does a healthy relationship look like to them? There's not really any age I can say like start having these conversations, but sometimes if I have said that studies is showing that at 8 years old young girls are now starting their periods, you can always gauge it with their age, and then you make it age appropriate to that, because what you're going to talk with the 8-year-old is different to the 15-year-old, is different to an 18-year-old. So you can always just gauge it around their age and just work it from there. What you do want to do though, in those types of situations when you're now navigating conversational starters, is normalizing the language. Use it as it is. If you're gonna call periods, call them periods. Don't call them Mrs. Red, just call it periods. If you're going to now start naming body parts when you're having the body parts or a sex conversation, call the vagina a vagina. Don't call it a flower, because one day it could happen that the word flower is used in a conversation, but really that's a really safe net of of a word, but you're not there to really, highlight that, oh, you're talking about that thing that you call a flower. So it's really important that they know that if someone touches my private parts, whatever part it is, I have to report to my mother, I have to report to my father. Don't say if someone touches my flower, if someone touches my whatever, because that can also complicate things. Because in surrounding areas or in environments, mom and dad, big sister, big brother, they're not always going to be there, but they could be surrounded by friends who are also learning different things at home, who are also learning things online. So the best way to just keep this safe and educational in the right format is to just use the words as they are. Another thing is that stock up on things before they start. This is another practical tips. You stock up on toothpaste because you need it. So stock up on menstrual sanitary products because they need it, because it's needed. Don't wait for, that day now when they're now going to ask someone else. I think the best thing is to really make sure that it's absolutely um like important that your children come to you, come rain, come thunder, no matter what it is. They shouldn't feel scared to tell mom that I'm on my period. They shouldn't feel scared to tell dad that I'm on my period. Like, dad should know where an emergency period box is. Same way big brother or other males in the house, they should know where those things are. But those are just practical tips which can be put in place as time goes forward, when you're now having these conversations slowly and taking them one step at a time. And another thing I have to say is that this is something that my mom taught me after now having serious and open and transparent conversation, is to track and write the symptoms. If you're experiencing these painful periods, tell your daughters, write it down, express it down. There's also apps these days, but before I started using apps, my mom gave me a diary, and she also bought me a puberty book, Learn About Your Puberty, Learn About Your Body book. She would sit down with me and tell me that this is what's going to happen. And if you have questions, you need to just ask someone, ask teachers. These days, um, periods are something that are actually quite a fundamental topic, especially online, because there's been some research that's finding out that there is so many physical conditions that are attached to them. So at school, it's now spoken about. Well, they're trying to really make it a curriculum that they speak about loud and clear. So at home, if it's spoken about as well, it just allows your children to be very comfortable. They won't need to feel like they can go to the next door neighbor. They can go home because mom and dad have given them the green light to always be open and transparent. The conversations are very much ongoing, because if you spoke to them at the age of 8 and now that they're 18, the conversations differ. So what you spoke about at 18, at 8 years old, is different to what you're going to be talking about at the age of 18. So it's an ongoing conversation. It never stops. It never stops. It should never stop. It should always keep going. And I feel like if we look at it in the sense where we're supporting and encouraging and listening to our children, that's one thing that we have to do throughout this whole thing, is to listen. Don't impose what you've gone through, what you are going through. Let them also express what they are feeling, because again, with menstrual health, there's things like mood swings. They sometimes won't even want to talk to you. They're sometimes a different person, but it's something that just needs to be understood, that okay, when we listen, this is how they're feeling, and how can I navigate that as a mom, as a dad, as an auntie, as a guardian? How do I navigate through all that? I think I'll put the questions, the conversation starters in the comments. Um, is that okay, Sis Ruby?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
absolutely fine. I think thanks, Ru. I think one of the fears within our community is around managing the symptoms that comes with women's health, right? Especially when it comes to young women. I remember I had the aunties in the community having a discussion around this, and there's a huge fear around when you take your daughter to the GP or sexual health clinic. They are then offered contraceptive pills, right, to manage some of the symptoms. And there's a huge fear, I think, within the community. And I would really love to hear what some of the parents, how they've managed it, obviously, to hear from you and Pastor Nick, and how some of the parents within the sphere today, how they have managed that. Because their fear is like, wow, if they're now offered contraceptive pills, we're giving them a green light to then go and have sex. So I think there is a real fear around that aspect, around managing some of the symptoms that comes with menstruation health.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, any thoughts on that, Ru? And have you come across it when you've been having some of these discussions within our community?
Yes, and I think also just being exposed to the healthcare system, there are pros and cons to certain things, and again, it's more about researching what's best for you. Um, I will really say as it is, like children are coming and going to sexual health clinics and going on contraception, and it's now in their own decision making, because they're law wise they can make that decision. But I think there's always this perspective that Sis Rumbi just spoke about, that when you now go on contraception, you are now partaking in sexual activities, and that's false as well, because some people do go on contraception because of irregular periods, which is connected to polycystic ovaries, PCOS. And what does, sorry, is regulate or help to manage the regulation of your cycle. It now all depends on different types of contraception that you go on, but most of the times that's also an option that doctors do look at or look into, not necessarily because someone is sexually active. It is also used for protection against pregnancy, but it's also used to help in the Department of Menstrual Health. Um, some people also use it for their skin. Someone could be having acne prone skin, breaking out a lot. They also are administered medication, or prescribed medication, should I say, to help reduce the acne. So it's for different causes, but I think it's too attached to, or someone is now playing in the field of sex activities, when really there's other factors that we can look into. But also, when it's like that, I think it goes back to conversations. Always goes back to conversations. Why do you want to go on the pill? Do you know that there are some complications that are attached to contraception? If they say yes, ask them what are they, because maybe they're just saying yes. If they say no, if you as a parent are aware of them, you can also say, okay, let's research. If you are confident and comfortable to even going into the appointment with them, go with them and hear the doctor out. And yes, so those are things that can start up in conversations. It's all to do with conversations, because on most part is assumptions from parents as well, because now you think, oh, someone is now playing in this field, but not really knowing that maybe they have something that's troubling them with their skin, with their periods. So it's more to do with conversations, I would say.
Yeah, Pastor Dube, do you want to have to share your contribution on this? And then I think we'll open it up, especially around the aspect of contraceptive pills being offered to young people as managing symptoms around menstruation cycle. I would really love to hear with some of the parents who've got experience in the sphere, and also open up the question after that, because it's a reality for a lot of parents. As much as some young people have used it for managing symptoms and so on, but actually some young people have gone on to use it as like, actually, now that I've got protection, I'm going to really engage in sexual activities. So I think we need to help each other and empower each other around, actually, how do we manage that sort of situation. Pastor Nick, over to you.
Thank you, Ru. I think that's a very interesting question. I'm not going to be long on my contribution so that we can come around to some of these things. But one of the things as I was preparing for this evening is this thought that whether especially for me, it's a challenge to fathers and to men, and even to mothers. We have a lot of mothers that are raising boys on their own. Is that the best thing that you can do for a young boy? I appreciate that the sort of like the pursuit for academic success, but for me, having worked in psychology, having worked in the church, is for them to know how to treat women. If we can equip our boys to know how to value, how to treat, and how to relate with women, I think we would have won half, if not more than half, the battle that they will have to deal with growing up. Because some of the things are all come back to relationships and to women and to sexuality. And so I would want to encourage that this is not a topic that fathers or men should shy away from. It's funny, as you were talking, Ru, I just remembered, when me and my wife were just, young people in the church, and eventually started dating. She had trouble with her periods, and they were extremely painful, and half the times we'll be hanging around each other. But I slowly began to get involved and being able to support her, being understanding, and being able to buy her painkillers, being able to give her that space, being able to drive her home, being able to get her support, but being there and understanding and give her that support, and it really made a difference in our lives. I mean, and like I said, the last time, 22 years later, this year we're celebrating 22 years, and I think that has been one of the glues, just being able to not stay in my place and say, I'm a man. Some of these things are just outside of my sort of like understanding. I don't need to know about this. I don't need to be involved about these things. They're just women things. And so I think it is very, very important. My brief contribution is to take this topic, and again, I'm going to bring Ru on some of the ideas. Is my training and qualification and experiences in psychology. So when I looked at this topic, one of the biggest questions is to ask myself, how do all these things affect our children psychological? What's going on in their minds? What's going on in their soul. What are they thinking? You know, and what's happening in them. And so when you look at from a boy's point of view, I think research also, most boys are getting into puberty very early, 9, 10. You know, most 9 and 10-year-olds in primary school right now are already exposed to pornography, are already exposed to all these issues. And they are already, if they do happen to have a phone, if, you know, they're already sharing some of these things from their friends. And so these things start very early. So I had a couple of questions, or really, I want to tackle it in like 3, 4, 5 areas. In terms of this puberty, in terms of this change, that also then ties into girls, you know, periods. So number one is, how does it affect them sexually? How does that puberty stage, how does that, you know, coming from just being a boy, and the brain is releasing those hormones, and suddenly they are aware they are being a man, they are aware of themselves, they are aware of girls, they are aware of the world that is around them. So the number one thing is us as parents being aware of the sexual impact on our children and young people. One of the biggest, saddest things is the influx of pornography. I think it's one of the, oh God, I don't know. I mean, it makes you angry. It's one of the biggest demon, if I would call it, and that really is really eating at our young people, especially when it comes to boys, and that it becomes the sort of source of information for toxic sexual information that makes boys begin to look at girls as just just something to be used, and something to be used and score points in conversations with their friends the following day at school. And so I think it's very important for us parents to really be aware of the impact that, you know, pornography is having on children and on young people. It's very sad that while social media and the internet is very powerful and beneficial in many ways, but as we have seen, sexualization of young people is not only just in Europe, in America. I mean, you get on the internet, you know, you've got children or young girls in primary schools and secondary schools in Africa, in villages, in all sorts, being naked or engaged in all these things, in classrooms, in parties, at 15, at 16. And so that is, I believe, one of the challenges that we need to deal with, and that, especially for the boys, we need to find a way and a conversation that we can begin to build. And I mean, Ru posed a question that hopefully we can answer later, that we need to be able to show them what a healthy relationship looks like. We need to be able to show them that not everything is built on sex. We need to be able to show the boys that it's not all about what you can take from your girl. Like I said earlier on, is learning the ability that a girl is valuable, a woman is valuable beyond their sexuality. They are not just an item to be used for sex, but they are someone who's made in the image of God. They are someone with purpose, with potential, with a value, with intellect, with skills, with abilities that can be a contribution. That my cry is that if our sons can look at girls, can look at women with value and dignity. And my biggest challenge is for fathers. It is up to us fathers. Fathers, let us show that, you know, to our wives. If you are married, if there is a father, how you treat your wife, how you treat the women around you becomes a powerful image to the boys that are watching around you. And it's very important that it paints a picture, you know, that they begin to understand these things. So it's the sexual thing. The second thing I want to touch on, and I'm going to ask Ru a question on that, is rather before I go on, one of the saddest things these days is the normalization of casual sex. You know, and that I think is built up on pornography, built up on, well, everyone is doing it. It's normal. It doesn't matter. And so young people are viewing sex at 14, 15 as if it's just having another drink and another cappuccino. It means nothing. It won't impact. Yet we know that it can define someone's future. It can have very lasting consequences in their destiny and in their tomorrow. So I think we need to go back to that conversation of what healthy sex, what it is. We need to be able not to demonize it, as the church has done it for a long time, as if sex comes from the devil, it is evil. No, God created it, but it is fruitful in its right time, in its right environment, supported by a foundation of love, of trust, of honor, of respect, at the right time when one is ready to do those. And I think it's a conversation that we need to be able to engage in. And so one of the second things that I began to notice, my oldest son is 15, is when the boys are growing up, one of the biggest changes is emotional change. For boys, let me just I'll highlight a couple of things, and Ru, if you can come in to say what are the emotional changes for girls that parents can be aware with, whether it's fathers or mothers, especially for us men. If I'm raising a daughter who's going through periods and she starts going, being silent, withdrawn in her room all the time, or going, like, what are the emotional things? But one of the things that I realized for boys is it's sort of like this, boys are quick to get into this independent space of I am a man. It's one aspect of it, where they begin to want to, sometimes they will almost, if you're a mother raising boys, they would almost, like, as if intentionally be rebellious and intentionally just be opposing everything you do, and you give them instruction as if they just want to go over them. And it's because psychologically it is as if they are finding their voice and their space and their place as a man. And that is why I think as parents we need to have that wisdom, that we are not always reactional, but we are always asking ourselves what is going on in them. Yes, what could be manifesting is this behavior, but behind the behavior, what is going on for them, what is going on in them. But the second thing, that they begin to do, other than rebellion or beginning to, sometimes I tell my son small things, like, oh, just close that door, whatever. And like it is as if he wants to also, place or insert his authority, like, oh no, I'll do it when I want to. And like, you're like, young man, and you're frustrated and confused as a parent, like, where is this coming from? And so, but it's having the grace to understand that, and knowing how to respond with grace and love and support, but not with fear and just being reactional. But the second thing I noticed is this sense of anger. If you're a mother raising boys, one of the biggest challenges I'm hearing is boys at early ages are rising up with an anger, and they wonder, where did it come from? And sometimes it has got nothing to do with you as a parent, but they are so bombarded with a lot that they're trying to find their space in the world. They're trying to find their identity among their friends, their identity in what social media is saying, their identity even in the home, their voice. They're trying to answer this question, who am I? And so sometimes when they don't fit in, it can bring about an anger and the frustration. But sometimes it's that frustration within themselves, that I am not what social media says I should be. I am not what my friends are saying. And so that is why one of the biggest challenges is this toxic masculinity that is on social media, that is everywhere. This is what a man ought to be. The music videos, the movies, the other content creators and the celebrities that are just flashing the money and talking about sleeping with different girls every other day. And it brings in this confusion of their sense of self and their sense of identity. So maybe Ru, if you can come in, like, emotionally, what's going on for girls when they are going through the period, and especially as fathers, or men around them, how do we understand, how do we support, how do we respond?
And with having, obviously, being someone who is going through it, or who does go through it, I also did a poll this other time, to understand what the female is feeling when she's on her periods. A number of the percentage actually claimed to not be a fan of males during the time of their periods, of which I think I can also lean towards that side, because not I don't know what it is, but there's just some sort of um I wouldn't say anger or whatever, but if there are also people who also experience this, please comment in the section, where I feel like my cousin brothers, my father, or any male friend of mine, they're just not my favorite cup of tea in that moment. And annoyance from the male is something that girls usually say they experience. Also, the girls are very teary and emotional. Some can also be the complete opposite, like in terms they just maybe not burst in tears, but they can be very angry. But being emotional, being really teary, and some of the tears, it's very silly. Could be, I don't know, you ask for two sugars in tea, but someone put three, and that can already trigger your emotions, trigger your tears. It's something very, very, very silly. There's also low energy, like what someone has written in there. That can also be attached to low iron, because some people have low iron because they're losing a lot of blood. So it brings a lot of fatigue. So sometimes girls will sleep. It doesn't make sense why they're sleeping. And again, because if someone is not aware of, what's happening and stuff, they will sleep and sleep and sleep and sleep. That's all they literally just want to do. Feeling low, feeling fatigued, and just low in mood. Sometimes you almost feel, not even almost, there is something called a PMDD. I'm going to type the thingy. PMDD is basically, I guess I can say, it's a symptom that is also similar to depression, just during your periods. So low in mood, some people actually go to the extent of feeling like they do not want to belong or exist anymore with that period. So there's a lot that do come with it, and PMDD is actually something that is it's a diagnosis. So you have to go through some assessments for your doctor to give you that diagnosis, and it does affect mental health, but it's only usually during the luteal phase, the 2 weeks or 14 days before you start your period. That's now preparing you for your menstrual phase. As soon as your period starts, some people begin to feel normal again. Normal in the sense that they're back into their normal self. Yes, they're still low, but you don't feel like not existing anymore. So it's usually just 2 weeks of that cycle, but it happens every single month for them, every month. And um that's something that is something that's spoken about in not spoken about, sorry, very loudly as well, because I guess it's attached to menstrual health, not menstrual health, mental health. It's attached to depression. It's also attached to suicidal. So a lot of people don't like to speak loud about it, because they then feel like they're now going to feel judged by other people. But it's actually quite a serious condition. And it doesn't really make sense to say why you're feeling like that. It just happens. It just attacks you for most people. So yes.
Maybe just in a few seconds, what kind of support from men around you either did you receive or you would wish you would receive, or the understanding, like, so how do we support you? How do fathers that would listen to this support young girls if they're going through these emotions?
So I think it's also, again, having the necessities of just reading and researching, because sometimes it can also be overwhelming to keep asking and asking someone. but also when someone is ready to engage in a conversation after that period, for example, just having a conversation. Okay, now asking the question, how can I support you? Because for every person, for every female, for every woman, for every girl, it's going to be different, like the type of support they want. Some people really and truly want to be left alone during their period. Some people want, I don't know, food. Some people want to be maybe just taken out of the house, just having an understanding, or some people just even a call can just help them. But I think for me, at the age that I am now, in the previous relationship that I was in, I had an exceptional person, to be very honest with you, and I used to find it to be so dreadful to talk about my struggles with my periods, but I really had a supportive person from the moment I get into that luteal phase, because for some people, 2 weeks before you start feeling the pain before your period even starts. And for me, sometimes it would be that would be the worst 2 weeks before the period. So I think having someone who is very understanding, patient, because there are times when arguments are created during that time and you don't mean what you're saying, but it just it becomes something you just say, and because you lash out and you become angry. And I think understanding that there's a um premenstrual symptoms. Those are symptoms that are happening now before your period and starts. So they could be painful back, maybe even giving them a hot bath, things that can soothe them and make them feel better. There's also some natural herbal teas that are there, making one of them, buying them those things. But then again, it just depends with the person, like what they want in that meantime. But I also want to emphasize, not everyone wants to be lovey-doved up
Yeah.
during that. Some want to be completely left alone. I have my little sister. She doesn't want to talk to anyone. She actually wants to be left alone, and she won't bother you. She will talk to you when she wants to talk to you, and you just leave it like that. But I also feel like having a dad that's raised two daughters, it's also been very lovely to see, because I've seen how he's looked after my mother and been open to having discussions. It's not easy for him, I'd like to say, but he definitely has tried and pushed his way in trying. So it's completely about having open discussions. And I think I feel I keep repeating myself about open
No,
discussions,
no.
but
Yeah.
that's really the fundamental thing. Open discussions, open conversations. So yeah.
Now that's awesome. What I'm hearing more than anything is that, especially us as men, is to be involved, but also to approach it with grace and know our children, and know when to give them the space and know when to be present, and also not take what they are going through as a rejection of us as a parent. But and because it also then brings me to this point for both boys and girls, that when they're going through periods, when this menstruation cycle, when they're going through the puberty, they can seem like difficult children, especially the early years of 14, 15, and 16, that if we just lash out with anger, we can then drive them into sort of wrong emotions and wrong behavior, because we didn't receive what they're dealing with understanding. And that is where many turn into gangs and turn into drugs and turn into the wrong things. And sometimes it's difficult because many of us are working 12-hour shifts and we are tired, we are not present, we always do not have that sort of time where you are relaxed and you can listen and you can take in. But it's a balance that we will have to find. It's a balance that we will have to create. Let me just end on this point, because I think some of the things will come up in questions, and that is the second thing that I feel like when children, especially boys, are getting into that puberty stage, is this search for self, is this self-identity. As I said in the first point, and I think it's a huge burden on us parents, helping our children when they are entering that space define sex in a healthy way. Otherwise, pornography, casual sex, social media, what their friends are into will define it for them. If it's a girl, their friends will tell them, girl, there's no need for you to keep yourself. We're all doing this. You look silly. You are left out of the group. If it's a boy, it will pressure them into feeling, in order to be seen as a man and masculine, you need to be sleeping with girls every other day. And I think it's a very, very powerful or important thing that we need to lay the foundation. We need, whether it's at home, at church, wherever. I think we need to be able, if we're going to win this war against all this toxicity, is to be able to define it. What is, even as Ruth said earlier, what do healthy relationships look like? You know, what is healthy sex? What does it mean? When are you ready to have sex? You know, because they start having all these feelings, but because they're having all these feelings at 15 and 16. You know, I was watching, you stumble up these crazy social media interviews, and you listen, especially to the Western culture, and everyone are asking themselves, oh, when did you start sleeping around? And you're hearing 13, 14, 15, and you're like really shocked. Like, I mean, it's 13, and that's like year 7. And like, and they'll talk about it laughing as if, oh no, it's 13 and 14 or 15. They're already sleeping around, they're already engaged in sex. Like, and I mean, the person still has got years to go. So if it's defined wrong at that point, imagine what they are at 20, at 25, and how does that impact them as an adult and in future relationships. And so I'm seeing some gentlemen here. I'm glad I can see Felix on the line. Thank you, sir, for having us, for being here rather. We welcome you, we appreciate you, because us men, we usually shy away from these spaces, but we are needed more than any. We are needed. I've grown up in church ministering. One of my favorite verses in the Bible is when God said in Genesis, Adam, Adam, where are you? You know, Adam, Adam, man, where are you? And my cry to us men is that we are not just absent. They are absent fathers, but even if you are at home, don't be a present absent father. You know, don't be present in working and be present in bills, but absent emotionally, absent in carrying the burden of the children, absent otherwise. And that is what is tearing marriages. That is what is tearing our children. And it, you know, Ru, you asked a question earlier, and it made me ask myself a question, which maybe for another day, like showing children healthy relationship. But I'm thinking, many of our relationships as adults are falling apart. You know, there's bad examples and people are at each other's throat. So how do we show them healthy relationships when us parents are in many aspects going through unhealthy? How do you show them healthy relationship as a single parents, and I'm as a single mother or father? And I'm sure there are powerful answers, but you can see the dynamic that despite what we are going through, we still have a responsibility of equipping our children for the future. Despite our own challenges, you still have, even if you're a single mother, you still have a burden to make out of those boys responsible, powerful men, you know, that will love and cherish the women around them with value. So one of the things that I would end with is this sense of identity. One of the things that both girls and boys are going through in this season is defining this thing, who am I? Who am I? And social media is doing a lot of harm, a lot of damage in that issue of identity. Who am I? Let's help them define sexually, but let's help them find their identity. Who am I? You know, because it will help them define those values. It will help the girls you touched on consent be able to tell a boy, I don't have to sleep with you to prove anything. You know, I know who I am. I know where I'm going. I know my goals are. It will help boys define that I don't have to sleep around with girls to prove to my friends, you know, the following day at school that, you know, like I have arrived or I am some type of anything. So is this issue of identity, but psychologically what I've learned and in studies and in working, sometimes our young people in that space can go through this conflict in their minds. that shows up in very frustrating, confusing ways for them and for us parents. And sometimes as a father, I have learned to know when I didn't know the answer, and I go and look for it. And sometimes I've learned to find the answer with my sons. And so, what are you feeling? What are you thinking? Why are you thinking that? If there's anything that is powerful, one of my mentors is a gentleman called John C. Maxwell. He's a leadership coach, guru, full stop by nine in the whole world. He's, taught leadership in churches and everything, John C. Maxwell. So one of the books he wrote that we studied in one of the workshops in America was a book called Good Leaders Ask Good Questions. I think one of the powerful things is good parents know how to ask good questions and know how to be present. You will win. Know how to ask good questions. And one of the questions, before I hand over to Rumbi, that I ask my sons every day is not only how was maths, how was science, how was school. After asking that, I'm asking, how are you? How did that make you feel? So how are you? What did you succeed at? And I've learned another question. What I look for their failures. What did you fail at? What went wrong today? How did that make you feel? What went wrong today? I deliberately push them to tell me their failures for the day, because how they handle that, how they handle those frustrations is equally as powerful as how they handle their successes. And so good parents, if there's anything, know how to ask good questions. Know how to ask questions. It will bring out the child. They will not hide in the social media and pornography and other things, so we will not be shouting and screaming, but we will know how to ask good questions, no matter what the need, no matter what the situation. Let me stop here. As a person who has been a pastor, it will turn into a conference, and we'll be taking offerings soon. But I think there's lots of ideas and fantastic points, and parents ready to jump in. I'll take it back to Rumbi, and then we can get everyone to jump in, and we can all equip each other. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Pastor Dube, and Drew, for providing your insights in the past sort of like 90 minutes. I think there's been quite a few contributions in the chat. One of them was around, I think, Adelaide. I think it was to Ruth's point when she says that it's taking 7 to 10 years to land on some of these diagnoses. Would you like to speak to that if you're available to speak? Because I know that you might be really busy, but Adelaide, would you like to speak to that at all if you are available?
Hi, Rumbi.
Hello.
Hi, thank you
Good
so much
evening.
for this great platform and for the speakers. Yeah, I guess my point was when Rue was talking about the kind of takes 7 to 10 years for diagnosis. It's not that that's actually the length of time it's supposed to take, but generally speaking, we know that in the world of medical research, a lot of it is based on male kind of research and not really a lot on female research. So there isn't a lot of capacity out there for people who are looking into these things and are prioritizing. So it's taking that long because actually people are not interested or actually don't know. So when you go to your GP, they're not looking for it, they're not understanding it. So it's really important that we take the responsibility of being able to articulate quite clearly when we go to our consultation. So I think Ruth spoke about diaries, etc., etc. So being able to explain quite clearly what your symptoms are and how they're manifesting, doing our own research. And, one of the things that I think I talk about a lot at the moment is healthcare isn't the same as it was many, many years ago, particularly in for those that are in the UK. It's, it's really incumbent on individuals to advocate for themselves a lot of the time. So I think understanding, particularly when it comes to women's health, that we really have to go there and advocate and fight for ourselves, for our daughters, for our sisters, our mothers, whatever, where you feel you have that voice, then it's, go out there and speak it, really. Yeah, thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Adelaide. Sorry, Ru, did you have a response or addition?
I'm actually gonna put something in the chat. So it's something that did come out sometime, if I'm not mistaken, it should be this year, on medical misogyny, based on what Adelaide was saying, that some of the key things on menstrual health that are taking a very long time to be looked into is because there's not, again, there's not money that is poured into these researches for them to happen, and also because the male around they carry the the health system. They are not really pushing for it to be something that's looked into, or for it to be something that's advanced or people to learn and understand. But I'll put something in there. I'll put something in the comments.
Thank you so much. We will make sure that we copy that link and share it with all the guests that have attended. And if you do want to receive any material from this evening, please do drop your email in the chat. Then we'll make sure that we follow that up. I think is it Foley? Paula, you wanted to say something very earlier on in the discussion. Would you like to still sort of like contribute to the discussion? I noted that when you raised your hand.
Hi, no, I'm so sorry, Rumbi. It was just an error. It was me just maneuvering my gadget and not knowing what I was doing.
No, that's absolutely fine. We didn't want
I'm
to
so
miss
sorry.
that's absolutely fine. We didn't want to miss the important contribution that you may have, but that's absolutely fine.
That's fine, yeah.
Yes. Is there another question that I've missed? I think there was another contribution. I think a question from Adelaide again. I think she was talking about what does that look like. I think it was when Pastor Dube was talking about we need to bring up men that are respectful. And I think Adelaide was asking a question around what does that look like practically and in reality.
Sorry, can I just add something? I think you
Sure.
you did answer most of that question for me, but I guess maybe the point, if I just elaborate on what Rumbi said, was more around, so you're in the home and you've got, I suppose, a husband, a partner, whatever, who is really like, I'm a man and this is what we do culturally. I don't talk to the kids, you do all the talking. If I'm needed, I will discipline, or I'm the provider and whatever else. So if you as a woman, I guess, want to be able to engage in those sort of discussions around the emotional needs of the children, sort of, I suppose, any guidance around how we can start to ask those questions, and how we can start to explore, because I think one of the things that I think is an issue is that as adults or as parents, we don't always, I suppose, we haven't always sorted ourselves out before we are thinking of meeting the needs of the children. So there's something about addressing our own issues as adults and kind of coming to that understanding. So how does one go about, I suppose, becoming more emotionally intelligent around raising our kids?
That's awesome. Maybe if I can jump in briefly, I used to have a thought that's kind of funny, and I used to have this thought that says I was raised by a single parent and I turned out all right. It is just like, but just to say, because something is not present at home does not mean my future is ruined. Does that, just because someone is not present for me in a certain way, does not mean, and like I spoke earlier, but sometimes we have fathers that are present and absent at the same time in some areas, But I think there is a grace. I mean, I'm a Christian. I can only say there is a grace of God. There is a wisdom of God. That when you are picking up your child from school, when you are taking them to their soccer stadium, that to their soccer matches rather, that there is wisdom and a grace of that can be impacted, even if the example right under their roof may not be displaying that level of example that you want them to be as a man. But I think for me, growing up in church, one of the things that helped me was knowing that ultimately God is an example as a father. God is my example as a heavenly father. The mothers, we can draw from that. We can draw from examples of good men. It doesn't mean we have to bash the father or put down the father, but we can point out to some of the examples of good behavior, of grace, of healthy relationships that are not always domineering, that are not always putting down the women, that are not always saying my way is the highway. Ways in which we can prepare our sons that when they get into their own relationship, they can know that it is a partnership. That the woman also carries value, carries ideas, carries intelligence around the issues around the home. And also, and where possible, and I'm glad African Youth Arise does some of these things, and maybe it's a combination that we can have in terms of mentoring around these things, expose children to some of these things. I believe that there is I don't want to call it grace again. I think our young people can somewhere at some point be able to pick what is good and healthy and what is wrong. But I think what may not be good is to be silent just because the man in the house is not being exemplary. I think find the grace of God to communicate, to expose them, to pray over them, to link them to where they can find exemplary behavior and be a model in that. And I believe somewhere along the way, I was raised in toxic environments. I was raised without a father, and I turned out all right. I can't even tell you where I get the love and the passion for my kids to be present, to shop for their uniforms. I'm the one who irons their uniform, dresses them up. My wife is a head of radiology. Half the time she's on meetings and she has to go home early. I'm the one who's taking them to school, coming back and doing my own thing. And it doesn't change who I am as a man. It doesn't change who I am as a father. Half the times when she's come back from home every day, me and my son are standing, my 15-year-old in the kitchen, dinner is done, ready, served. We're eating when she walks in, and we can talk about the other things. And it doesn't change me, it doesn't affect me. I didn't see that growing up. I didn't see it from my father. He wasn't there. But somehow the grace of God, being in church and seeing other good men and good behavior, I was able to pick up on all those things. And so I believe there is opportunities and there's grace every day to be able to do all those things. Yeah. And they will turn out all right. They will turn out all right.
Thank you, Pastor Nick. I think in terms of really applaud you for turning out to be the man that you are, and I'm always, every time we have a conversation, I'm enlightened. However, I think in terms of and you did turn out all right, but I think there are individuals who turned out otherwise.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't that presence, and I think that's what Adelaide is focusing on in terms of what are some of the practical steps that us as mom or as guardians that you can take to. Sorry, my assistant is complaining. What are some of the practical steps really that we can take? What are some of the things that have helped you? Other than there's some people who are not even connected to any faith groups, right? So yeah, and this question is just not to Pastor Nick, right? It's across board. So if there are any practical steps that we can take in terms of to ensure that we are equipping
our young people when there isn't that sort of like male or sort of like positive female influence.
Yeah, I mean, anyone can jump in. I don't know, Felix, do you have some thoughts, sir?
Sorry, I just joined late. You know, being a latecomer always, I'm not really sure of the terms of reference, so I'm slowly following. Maybe you can allow me to follow a little bit more. I should be able to come in, but what I know is talking from my point, I come from the psychology field. I am saying an apple doesn't fall very far away from its tree.
Mm.
What is that which we are doing as parents, as mothers, as fathers? Remember, our children learn through imitation, through emulation of what we do at home. More often, we try to model specific types of behavior which we expect them to also exude when they grow up. If we do the opposite, who are we to expect them to do the good? So it should start with us. That's the reason why we say charity begins at home. As a father, I'm very happy. Am I demonstrating that I love my children as a father in the first place? As a father, am I there whenever they need me to support them? Emotionally, financially, you can name it. And as a mother, what am I doing? I have duties, I have roles, which as a mother I should do. How good am I at respecting my own husband in the house? How good is my own husband respecting me as his wife? At the end of the day, sometimes, like someone has already said, you know, we don't actually have a modus operandi as to what is that we must do for our children to be like this. But looking at experience and what I've encountered in life, psychologists talk of parenting styles. I think in the medical profession, you also know about it. They talk about 4 parenting styles, which we must try and utilize in our own homes. They talk of the authoritative one, the authoritative style. This one is the one where we are positive, warm, but very firm. We must be very firm and consistent. If we're able to do that, we are upbringing brilliant children at the end of the day. But again, like Nikki has said, at the end of the day, the rule of physics also reigns. For every chemical reaction, there is 5% failure rate. we won't expect everyone who has seen good to be good in future. That's what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, thank you.
2, I am also saying we are lucky or very unlucky. My generation, it's most of you here, that when we grew up, we had very limited sources of knowledge. And it was easy for us to learn from the few sources of knowledge. The challenge with the 21st century child is they are overwhelmed with what we call multi-literacies, multi-sources of knowledge. And now they don't know what is that which is right, what is that which is wrong. At the end of the day, they become confused. But again, it comes down back to us as parents. How good are we monitoring how exposed they are as far as the social media and social network is concerned? I guess I will come in later, but we as parents, we are failing to model what we want our children to be. We must also be blamed. Let's only not blame the children. What role are we playing? Remember, the modern society tells me, and this is reality, 3/4 of the day, our children are in school. We only have those children for a quarter, more often. And of that quarter, are we able to utilize it as parents? Or we allow the social network to take over and become the parent on our own children? That's $1 million question to be answered. Thank you very much, Nikki. You can continue.
No, that's fine. I'm going to take it back to Rumbi, but before I do, for 30 seconds, there was one, I think, from Zimbabwe or one of the African forums, a mother was crying that when her son was young, and it actually turned out into a painful story. The mom and the dad divorced here in the UK. They went through a divorce, the fight, and things were not okay. And it started showing up at school. She started being called at school. He's now fighting at school. He's not listening to the teachers. He's getting involved in fights and in all sorts of things. And I think when, obviously, the challenge is that most of the times we're reactional. When mom reacted, obviously, to try and explain or cover up at school, the son further exploded in rebellion. And that eventually led him into gangs, into drugs, into very difficult things that down the road, unfortunately, he ended up, and it's a painful one, taking his life right here in this country, a young boy from Zimbabwe. But it spiraled out of just that sort of like breaking relationships at home. And for me, when Felix was talking, I was saying, I think let's notice those things and get help and support where we can. You know, and seek out the psychological, the therapy, and if I don't have the answers, seek them somewhere else. You know, seek for help, seek for support. You know, and these things are available. You know, don't carry the burden to always fix everything. You know, but our children sometimes are caught in that space. That can bring in confusion and lots of explosions in their own lives that can make them vulnerable to all these social sort of issues going on around them. But let's seek help when we notice this puberty thing and all these things is introducing attitudes and characteristics that will lead them in dangerous places. Or if we feel the example at home or from one of us or both of us, you know, we talk these days in psychology about healing generational trauma, you know, about us addressing our own issues so that we don't parent out of trauma. We don't parent out of, you know, the same sort of like wounds, you know, we don't parent wounded and pass on the wounds. And so I think we have a lot to learn. We have a lot to grow in, but also be gracious on ourselves. You know, some of these things, you're a mother raising boys on your own or in marriages where someone is not playing their part. It's never easy. It's never straightforward. Be gracious, find help, seek help. And you know, and I think there's always a way, there's always a grace, and it's our prayer. We can only do what we can and pray over the future of our children, you know, that despite our own limitations, that they turn out all right. Rumbi.
Thank you so much. I've just seen. Thank you both, Pastor Nick and I think it's Dr. Felix, for your contribution. I think I'll move over to. I've seen quite a lot of contribution from Dr. Shaz, I think, in terms of some of the questions that you can ask your child when they've come from school. I just wondered whether they wanted to have a contribution. I think you've provided us with a vast list of questions that we can ask to get more from our children, other than to say, how are you? And then they say, I'm fine. It's like, okay, where do I go with this? So Dr. Shaz, did you want to contribute to the discussion?
Oh, hi. Thank you, everyone. Not really. I was just adding on to what Pastor Dube had said when he was talking about how he starts a conversation with, was it your son or your daughter?
My son,
yeah, those are the things that I share with parents as well, is to start a conversation with your children. And then when you start those conversations, you tend to see that they warm up, that they give you, you know, exactly what is happening. They won't hide things from you. And then by so doing, you end up going to exactly the kind of conversation. It leads you to exactly the conversation that you want to start. Like obviously, talking about sexual health, sometimes it can be very difficult to break through with your children. But when you start with those little things, you tend to warm up, your children tend to warm up, and then you dive into the deeper conversations with them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shah. I think it's amazing that to what we really want from this, the outcome of this discussion. Really, we want to get practical tips of how we can implement, with our families. So those questions are really really useful. And if there's anyone else who does have any practical tips that we can use as parents to empower ourselves and to ensure that we empower our children when it comes to some of these taboo topics. I've seen Adelaide. I'll come back to you again. I think you've made a contribution around some of the resource. If you're still on the call, I think you've recommended a book on. I think you said it's on pain and prejudice. I think. Would you like to just elaborate on that to give it a little bit of context?
Hi. No, it's just a really good book that talks about misogyny in medicine, for anybody who's interested in sort of learning a bit more about, kind of, I suppose, that reality looks like, and just kind of gives you the background on the issues that impact women. So it's not just about menstrual health, but generally women's health. So it's if you're a book lover and you're interested in reading all sorts of different stuff, that's actually quite a good book to read, just for some background understanding. So at least, because I think to be forearmed is the best thing going forward, isn't it? So that you can deal with whatever life throws at you. And since I'm talking, Rumbi, if you don't mind, I think I just added things like, the little tips around how we can communicate with our kids, immerse ourselves into their world, watch the programs that they like to watch with them. Don't allow them to watch TVs in their room, just things in their room or on their laptops or tablets or whatever. Actually allow, the family room or living room, wherever you have the main sort of TV, just go and sit there. I hate things like Love Island and God knows all these things that are showed, but go and sit down and watch and understand what they are being exposed to, so it allows the discussion to happen, and you can then, one, understand what they're being exposed to, two, what they are actually thinking about those things that they're being exposed to, and then three, have the discussion. And it's just starts to build that openness and honesty around things that maybe a lot of us find naturally difficult because we weren't brought up in that way. These things were stigmatized. They were things that you didn't talk about with your parents, certainly, but our children are so open. Even our young kids are so open to discussion. So yes, you will grit your teeth. Yes, you want to block your ears so you don't hear and see what is being said, but immerse yourself in the world. Watch the TikToks that are going on. It's they tell us what is happening in society, and you need to immerse yourself and engage with that, because this is the world your children are living in, and there's no way you can impact them and make a difference if you do not have any understanding of what they're being exposed to. So you're not diminishing yourself and your values and your beliefs by immersing yourself in that world, but actually you're arming yourself so that you're able to fight. So whether you do that spiritually, whether you do that verbally, it doesn't really matter, but at least you understand the enemy that you're fighting.
Mm.
Thank you so much, Adelaide, for your contribution. I think someone was asking what the book was called. We have just posted it on the messages. So just if you just look on the chat, you can pick the topic up. But what we'll do, all the resources that have been shared on the session, we will share it with your email address. If you we'll share it on your email address. If you've provided us with your email. Are there any other questions? And is there anything that I've missed? I've tried to go through sort of all the questions and sort of like the contributions and ask people, guests to elaborate on what they stated in the chat. Is there anything else before we sort of like pose it back to Ru and Pastor Nick on final thoughts? Adelaide.
Sorry, I like to talk, so please excuse me. I think I was just gonna take it back a little bit to when you were talking about the contraception thing.
Yes,
So
yes. Thank you.
mothers, well, not mothers, but whoever going with their child to go and um, talk about what's happening with their periods, and then suddenly contraception is introduced. And you asked the question about people's experiences. I had really bad periods, so I was very cognizant of my child going through really bad periods, and I took her to the doctors wanting a solution because I didn't get that, because goodness me, there's no way anybody in Zim would have given me contraception at my age to deal with period pain. But I was aware that there were solutions. She didn't have to suffer. She was missing school. She was, miserable. She was her emotional health was greatly affected, and she just a week, 2 weeks, a month, her life was just significantly impacted. So we went, and she was offered, different options, and we, we agreed she go on the contraception pill initially. She ended up needing 2 lots of different contraception, and that was fine. And we talked about it. We had the conversations about what it was for, but also what else it was used for. So again, having those open discussions, and I think it kind of goes back to the sense of, and I will repeat it again and again and again, as parents, as mothers, as fathers, as uncles and aunties, we need to kind of check ourselves first. Are we talking from a position of our own personal experiences, our own prejudices, our own life views, or actually are we seeking to resolve things that are right in front of us? And then even the conversation, because I think then it takes it on to the next level, just about sex. How do we have conversations about sex? And the other tip I would add is, if you go to schools, your children are at school, learn the curriculum, understand what your kids are being taught at school. Each year they will have lessons on, is it PSHE? Sorry, I've got kids out of school, so I don't remember all this stuff.
Yeah, it is.
But PSHE, go to the websites. They should be letting you know what's on the curriculum. If you can't find it, go and speak to the form tutor. Know what your kids are being taught at school, at what age, and you can either engage in the discussions prior to the sessions happening, or when they come back from school and this week they're discussing kind of sex between males and females, or even they are talking about transgender, they are talking about all these things at school. Engage your children at that point, because they've already been exposed to these things, and it might make it easier. So it's not just about you bringing it up, but ask them what they were taught, how they felt about it, and then share what you think about it as well. So at least you're opening the door so that they can come and have some of these discussions with you, instead of going to Google, Dr. Google, to find the answers, or going back to their peers, who are none the wiser themselves. They're also trying to explore and understand, and they lie to each other all the time. So yeah, we need to just again get involved, understand what our kids are learning formally, and use that as a way of having the discussion.
Fantastic. Thank you, Adelaide, for the reminder. I'd completely forgotten that question that I raised earlier. But yeah, it's really important for us to have that discussion prior. And I think that's why we have opened up this safe space for parents, because our aim as African Youth Arise is to engage in all of these topics that we've talked about with parents, to now engage with them, with your young people. And what we didn't want is for you to be uninformed about what we're going to, the content we're going to deliver to your young people, then coming to us all guns blazing, like, what are you talking to us, to our children about, and stuff like that. And we solely believe that, like, we totally believe that, you are our partners when it comes to empowering young people. Parents play a huge role in that journey. So we want to partner with you. We want to collaborate with you as we are delivering some of these workshops, and ensure that you are also equipped when it comes to some of these taboo topics, and so on. So I'm going to, if there isn't any other questions, I'm going to pass it back to Pastor Nick and Ru on the final thoughts and some of the takeaways, and then we'll close the session. In terms of this session has been recorded. I did state it earlier. If you've missed sort of like aspects of it, the first part of the discussion, we will share the link to our YouTube channel so that you can sort of like engage in the topic. So we'll continue having these discussions probably after every maybe 2 weeks. We'll have another discussion. We'll have other guest speakers. If you do have any suggestions around the topics that we can explore around sexual health, please do let us know. If there are any professionals sort of like within that field that can support us, we will be glad to hear from you. So I'm going to pass it back to Pastor Nick on the final thoughts, Andrew, and then we'll close the session.
Thank you. As a Christian, I mean, even if you're not a believer, I've got two final thoughts, and they're based on two scriptures for me. And the first one, I think, is a scripture in Psalms that says, if the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? And that is to say, when children are entering that stage that we've talked about today, there's a lot of challenge, there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of attack. Their minds and emotions are being pulled in every direction. But it's an invitation for us parents to lay a foundation on these issues of sex, these issues of consent, these issues, be it girls being strong, both boys and girls being strong in their identity, so that there is no guy or girl that can lure them into sex or drugs or anything to make them feel important. And let's be present with them, especially for me as a man. This is a challenge to fathers. Let's learn that emotional presence, because I believe God gave girls, or God gave us as fathers the opportunity to model to girls what a man looks like, and how to love and cherish and value our daughters or our girls without any motive. And the same thing with mothers. Let's be present. Even as somebody says earlier, being exemplary, let's lay that foundation. But the other one, and I think I've shared it before and I will repeat it 1,000 times, is let us be gracious. It's the prodigal son story. Our kids in this season might mess up, might go astray, might act up, but let us be like that father, always ready to welcome, always ready to restore, always ready to heal. Let us not react with fear. Fear creates a vacuum where all these other things can fill it. Fear creates a vacuum. Sometimes we can be disappointed with them, frustrated with them. My son is doing his GCSEs, is writing next year. As you can imagine, every single day we are watching. What are you doing? Where are you going? You've got exams coming up. But it also is to give that room for rest, for pause, and to accept that in as much as I want him to do well, but there is that room for who he is and what he can do, and not to myself as a parent to even define him by his mistakes and by his failures. Let us be gracious as we lay that foundation. And when we do, God is faithful. Even when they are alone at university at 25, that seed will come up again. When you are sowing today, it may look like you're not doing anything, but that seed will come up one day when they are alone, grown up, raising their own families, or in difficult situations. So don't get tired, parents. Be gracious. The fact that you are in this forum today means we are not only just passionate for our kids to be successful in school, but to grow up as mature, responsible, whole adults. Keep pushing, keep planting that seed, keep laying that foundation. I believe we will reap if we do not faint. But thank you so much, Rumbi. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for your final thoughts. Ruth?
So my final thoughts, or to just round up everything, is that I believe from what we've learned today is that I'm sure there are already parents that are doing this, creating a safe space, creating a home where children can come and start conversation and speak about things. But there may be also parents that may have been holding back because they don't know how to. So I think I also just challenge parents to just choose one topic, one question. There were loads that were sent on the chat. Just one question, just to start up a conversation with your children. It doesn't have to be heavy, it can literally be light. Because if we can't talk about the period side of things, for example, at home, how then are we going to expect the children, the daughters, the sons to come and talk about sex, consent, abuse, things that are happening to them that shouldn't be happening? If we can just start up conversations that are easy, in the sense that, okay, they're just light, you can start it light. I think it gives room for even the harder ones, the bigger ones, that need questioning, okay, how do I go? So at the end of the day, I think as a child myself, and as parents, for you all here as parents, aunties, guardians, all of you, I think the real thing to take on is that it's just not about the sexual health, the puberty, or the periods. I think we want to raise children that know about dignity, know about safety, and also just that they get to understand their bodies more, because it's a safe space at home. They can talk about it, they can learn about it. And I really liked what Adelaide came with about the curriculum on sexual health education. That's really worth looking at as well, just so you get an understanding. And also, from looking at that curriculum, you also pick some points to ask and communicate. And also, I just want to touch again on what Adelaide said about contraception. I do want to highlight the fact that sometimes when you do go to the doctors and you've mentioned about bad periods, the first thing they will give you, or the first option is usually contraception. And if you are in a position, both you and your child are not like comfortable or ready to like take that step, please do question if there's another option, if there's any other referrals that can happen, if contraception is not something you're looking into. We know that it's not for everyone, and it can also like raise up some complications, because there is pros and cons to things. So always argue with your doctors respectfully and ask like if there's any other referrals other than just contraception, for those that do not want to partake in contraception. Thank you.
Just to say thank you. Thank you so much, Ru. We're always glad to have you on board as part of the discussion, as one of the young voices that are really using their voice like very positively. So yeah, we're really glad to have you this evening. Thank you so much for your contribution and all the interaction. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of our guests that have joined this um, uh, that have joined this discussion. I think some people are asking for Ru's contact details. So Ru, if you can just share your Instagram. I think you share quite a lot around your Instagram, and if you don't mind sharing your email address, because I think we have some people who would like to get in touch. If not, I will share our email address, and if you've got any further questions, whatever, you can contact our team. But thank you so much for all of you for contributing. Have a lovely weekend, and you will definitely hear from us in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you. This has been really lovely.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, everyone.
Amazing.
Oh, I think Sekai has got her hand raised. Sekai, would you like to say something before we leave? Oh, she's left the call.
I think
Probably she was trying to leave the call and press the wrong button. Okay. All
Thank you
right.
so much.
We'll
Thank
call
you
it
so
a
much.
night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Ru. Thank you,
Thank you,
Rumbi.
Pastor
Thank you,
Nick.
Felix.
Thank
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you all. Thank you, Pastor
God
Nick.
bless you.
Bye
Thank you.
bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Have a good evening.